Rain drips through the cracks of the roof like time itself. Slow, cold, relentless. A single candle burns on the table, trembling with the breath of the storm. Beside it, a bowl of blood and linen. The smell of life, the smell of death, married in the same air. A woman bends over a crying newborn. Her hands are brown and trembling, her wrists thin as twigs, her skin glistening with sweat. They call her Mara. To the white masters, she is the midwife, the one who brings life when their wives cannot. To the other slaves, she is a whisper, a prayer, the one who remembers. She wipes the child clean, her touch soft, almost sacred. The baby's cry slices through the storm. The master's wife exhales, relief, gratitude, fear. Somewhere outside, the men laugh, drunk on rum and the scent of wet soil. Mara listens, always listening. Her ears catch the rhythm of boots, the shatter of a bottle, the groan of the old house under rain. It is a song she knows by heart, a song of masters and screams and babies who never see morning. Her eyes fall to the floor, to the basin where her own reflection shivers in red water. It looks back at her, distant, hollow. She remembers another cry, one that stopped too soon. A child born of her blood, her breath. A child sold under the noon sun, screaming for her mother as coins exchanged hands. The sound never left her bones. Thunder rolls, the candle flickers, painting ghosts on the wall. For a moment, she sees her daughter's shadow among them, small, reaching, fading. Mara blinks. Only the wind remains. The mistress speaks. God bless your hands. Mara, she says, voice trembling with relief. Mara nods once. Her lips form a small, quiet smile, the kind that hides everything. The child wails again, alive, pale, precious. Mara hums a hymn, low, slow, broken by the sound of rain. Her hands move with grace, wrapping the infant in white cloth. Her voice trembles but never cracks. Each note carries something deeper than song, a secret, a curse, a prayer too old to die. When the storm quiets, she sets the child beside its mother and steps away. Her candle burns lower. The red water in the basin darkens. The wind carries the scent of earth and smoke. Outside, the night waits, thick and endless. Somewhere in its dark belly, a whisper forms. They took mine. A pause. Now I'll take theirs. The screen holds on her face, calm, unreadable. The candle goes out. Only the sound of rain remains. Morning crawls over the fields like a wounded animal. The sun is pale and cruel, the kind that burns without warmth. The land steams after the storm, exhaling its breath of mud and rot. Crows sit on the fences black as sin, waiting for the day's first offering. Mara walks barefoot through the mist. Her dress is grey, torn, damp from the night's rain. Her hands cradle a small basket, herbs, roots, cloth, and a worn wooden spoon. The tools of her trade, the relics of her servitude. She carries them the way a priest carries his faith, not out of choice, but out of duty. Every step is heavy with memory. The earth clings to her soles, thick and unwilling to let go. The air hums with the sound of flies, the distant crack of a whip, the rustle of leaves whispering secrets to the wind. Somewhere beyond the cotton rows, someone is screaming, but screams here are ordinary. Like birdsong, no one stops, no one looks. The world keeps turning under the lash. The big house rises ahead, white paint peeling, windows shuttered, its porch heavy with the weight of ghosts. To those who built it, it is beauty. To those who serve it, it is a grave. Every plank, every nail, every polished step holds the sweat of the nameless. It gleams because of their hands. It stands because of their bones. Mara stops by the steps. She kneels, adjusting the herbs in her basket. Mint, sage, valerian. A pinch of crushed lavender, for soothing, for healing, for hiding the stench of rot. The scent of her world is layered, sweet from the flowers, sour from sweat, metallic from blood. She inhales all of it and feels alive in the wrong way. The mistress appears at the doorway, pale as milk, her nightdress clinging to her thin frame. "Mara," she says softly, "the baby's fever rises." Her tone carries worry but no kindness. Mara bows her head, stepping inside. The house smells of boiled linen, candle wax, and fear. The floorboards creak like old ribs. Portraits hang on the walls, faces of men who owned everything but their souls. Their painted eyes follow her as she moves, each step a trespass in a world she built but does not belong to. The nursery is dim, curtains drawn to keep the flies away. The air is hot, heavy and stale. The child lies in its cradle, pale, slick with sweat, its lips trembling. Mara dips a cloth into a bowl of cool water and wipes the baby's brow. Her movements are slow, deliberate, reverent. The mistress watches. "You've got the touch," the woman says. Mara doesn't answer. Her silence is habit now, a shield. Words cost more than they heal. When the fever breaks, the mistress sighs and touches Mara's shoulder lightly, a gesture meant as gratitude. But it feels like ownership. "God bless you," she whispers. Mara forces a smile. God has not set foot on this plantation in 100 years. She leaves quietly, stepping back into the sun. The air outside blinds her. Workers move through the fields, bent, beaten, sweating under the watch of mounted men. The overseer's whip cuts through the morning air, a punctuation mark on the sentence of their existence. Each crack feels like thunder echoing in her chest. She walks past them, her basket close to her body, her eyes on the ground. But she feels every stare, every flicker of pain, every silent cry caught between rows of white cotton. The plants sway with the rhythm of suffering. The wind hums low like mourning. Down by the cabins, smoke rises from breakfast fires, corn mush, salt pork, ash. The air tastes of soot and hunger. Children play in the dirt with sticks, their laughter sharp and brief, swallowed by the sound of hooves. Women hum old songs, their voices cracked, their melodies stitched together from memory and loss. Those songs carry history, not the kind written in books, but in blood. Mara stops by the stream behind the cabins. She kneels, washing her hands. The water runs brown, then clear. Her reflection trembles again. The same hollow eyes, the same quiet mouth. She stares at herself for a long moment. Behind her, an old man sharpens a blade. The rhythm of stone against steel fills the air. Hiss, scrape, hiss, scrape. It sounds like time counting down. She glances back, meeting his eyes. He nods once, slow, knowing. They do not speak. No one dares to speak of what lives in their silence. Mara gathers her herbs again and returns to her cabin as dusk falls. Inside, the air is thick with the smell of dried leaves and damp wood. Bundles of plants hang from the rafters. Rosemary, rue, foxglove, each with its own story, its own danger, each one waiting. She lights a small lamp. Its glow brushes the walls like the memory of fire. She grinds herbs in a mortar, steady, rhythmic, almost musical. The sound fills the room like a heartbeat. Thud, thud, thud. Each strike a memory, each memory a vow. Outside, the overseer's laughter drifts through the dark. Mara keeps grinding. The scent of crushed leaves fills the room, sharp, bitter, alive. She hums under her breath, the same hymn she sang the night before. But tonight, It sounds different. Lower, slower. Like a storm gathering in her chest, the pestle stops. She stares into the bowl, the green paste glowing faintly in the lamplight. Her eyes narrow, her breath steady. In that moment, everything around her seems to fade. The whip, the laughter, the cries. All that remains is the rhythm of her heart. In that silence, something begins, not a thought, not yet an act. Just a shadow behind her ribs, small, black and patient, and it whispers, not yet, soon. Night folds over the cabin like a shroud. The lamp burns low. Smoke curls toward the rafters, carrying the scent of crushed herbs and old sorrow. Mara sits on the floor, knees drawn to her chest, eyes lost in the flicker of flame. Silence presses down. Then memory begins to move, soft, like footsteps in another room. She remembers the heat, not this kind, not the still, choking air of the cabin, but the cruel heat of the auction yard, the smell of horses' sweat and rotting fruit, the iron ring around her wrist, the sound of her child crying shrill and bright, a small, terrified music cutting through the crowd. They had taken her daughter from her arms before the sun reached its height. Just a baby, soft hair like cotton fluff, skin still warm with her breath. The auctioneer shouted numbers over the sound of weeping. The master's wife had wanted to cover her ears. The master had smiled. Business. Always business. Mara had screamed once, just once. A sound torn from the bottom of her lungs, deeper than pain, sharper than rage. Then silence. Her voice left her that day, and never truly came back. She remembers the man who bought the child. A river trader with a red neck and yellow teeth. He held the baby by the arm like she was a sack of flour, said something about her being light enough to fetch a price, laughed when Mara lunged forward. The whip cracked. Her knees hit the dirt. The baby screamed again, smaller, fading, swallowed by the crowd. That sound lives inside her still. Sometimes it echoes in the wind. Sometimes in her dreams. It comes crawling back. The sound of her baby's breath turning to distance. They marked her that day. A burn at the base of her neck. An M for the plantation name. They called it mercy. She called it the end of her name. Years passed. Each day the same shape. She worked the birthing house, learned the rhythms of life and pain. How to stop bleeding. How to force breath back into lungs that did not want to live. She learned herbs. She learned silence. She learned that pain has color, and it is always red. Sometimes, when the other women labored, they would cry for their lost ones. Mara never did. She only hummed. The same lullaby she had sung on the riverbank, when the moon had still meant something. The song with no words, just the sound of breathing between heartbreaks. One night, long after the auction, she dreamed of her child, not as a baby, but older, walking barefoot across a field of smoke. Her small hand carried a flower, black as soot. She looked back at Mara and whispered something that wasn't a word, but Mara understood. The dream stayed. The image stayed. And when she woke, there were tears on her face for the first time in years. That morning, she went to the herb patch by the stream and found a plant she'd never noticed before. Roots deep, leaves dark, sap white as milk. She touched it, and her fingers burned. It was called Angel's Trumpet. The others said it was cursed, that it could make a man sleep forever. Mara smiled for the first time since the auction. Not joy, recognition, like meeting an old friend. From that day on, she tended that plant with care, not to use it, not yet, but to remember what it meant to hold power, even in secret. She began to whisper to the plant sometimes, the way she once whispered to her daughter. The same tone, the same patience. And though the plant did not answer, it grew stronger under her touch, tall, beautiful, deadly. In her silence, people thought she had healed. They thought the years had made her gentle, but gentleness is just the skin over rage. Inside her chest, something coiled, waiting, each birth, each cry, each thank you from the mistress layered on that waiting. Each moment of false gratitude filled her like poison filling a bottle. Until one day, she looked at the angel's trumpet again and thought, it's time she bloomed. The past never leaves. It sits with her every night. When the lamp flickers, it hums in the corner where the shadows move like breath. The auction yard, the river, the red-necked trader, her baby's cry, all of it loops inside her, endless. Until the sound of thunder feels like chains, until every wail of childbirth sounds like a ghost calling her name. And in the silence after each delivery, when the mother sleeps and the baby breathes its first breath, Mara feels both life and death meeting inside her hands. She has become both their servant and their judge. And deep down, she knows the day she buries one will be the day she frees the other. There is a kind of quiet that isn't peace, only the echo left after all the screams have died. That's the quiet Mara carries. It hums in her bones, soft and constant, like the breath of something that refuses to die. Years made her slow, deliberate. She no longer flinches at cruelty. The slap, the shout, the whip, they pass through her as if she were already halfway gone. She learned to disappear without moving, to survive by vanishing inside herself. But in that stillness, something began to grow. It wasn't forgiveness, it was thought. Cold, careful thought. At night, when the others slept, she would sit by the fire and study the way flames move, how they eat, how they twist, how they breathe. The fire had logic, a rhythm. It consumed only what it touched, but it always left a mark. Mara began to see it as a teacher, not destruction, purification, not rage, release. She began to understand that revenge wasn't a scream, it was patience made holy. Every day, she spoke less and listened more. Listened to the footsteps of the overseer, to the whisper of women praying for sons to live through the whip, to the ticking of the mistress's clock, marking hours that didn't belong to her, and beneath it all, the heartbeat of the plantation, the rhythm of suffering, predictable, unchanging, until someone decided to break it. She began to mark time differently. Not by sunrise or supper bell, but by signs only she could see. The day the mistress's canary died without reason, the day milk soured before noon, the day the sky turned orange at dusk. To others, they were nothing. To Mara, they were whispers of balance shifting, warnings, or invitations. She thought often of her daughter, not as the baby she lost, but as a spirit grown wild and untamed, moving through wind, through fire, through her. Sometimes she felt her near, like heat against her back when no one stood behind her. And she began to believe that the child had never left, only changed shape. Perhaps she was the flame. Perhaps she was the whisper in the herb garden. Perhaps she was waiting for her mother to finish the story. That belief became her church, the cabin her chapel, the silence her prayer. Each day, she touched the angel's trumpet. Careful not to break the leaves, she studied its poison, the way a priest studies scripture. 1 petal in tea could bring sleep. 2 could stop the heart. She memorized its power, but never used it. Not yet. Power without purpose is waste. The others began to call her strange, said she could see things before they happened, said her eyes looked through people. They whispered that she had crossed into something unnatural. Mara only smiled. The truth was simpler. She had learned to see without fear, and when you stop fearing death, everything around you begins to fear you instead. She saw how the master's hands shook after each cup of wine, how the mistress's dreams grew dark, how the overseer's horse refused to pass her shadow. Small things, but enough. The world had started to bend. Mara never hurried it. She knew that vengeance too soon is as useless as mercy too late. The seed had to take root. The air had to shift. The house had to learn what it had built, and so she waited. Each day another prayer, each night another hymn, without words. Her silence no longer felt like absence, it felt like preparation. By then, she no longer dreamed of escape. Freedom wasn't elsewhere. Freedom was control, the ability to choose who would wake, who would weep, who would remember. She had become something they could not name, not servant, not woman, not witch, something in between, the breath that comes before the storm, the calm before judgment. And though no one yet knew it, the fire had already begun, not in the fields, not in the barn, but in her eyes. Night folds around the fields like a shroud. The moon is thin, a single cut of light, sharp enough to bleed truth. Mara stands in the doorway of her cabin, barefoot, still. The air hums with heat and hunger. Even the crickets have gone quiet. The world holds its breath, waiting for her to move. She doesn't pray. Prayer is for those who want mercy. She wants balance. The angel's trumpet waits on the table, pale, soft, poisonous. She picks one bloom, careful not to break the stem. Its scent is heavy, almost sweet, the way sin sometimes smells before it kills. She grinds it slow between her fingers until the air itself feels dizzy. The sap sticks to her skin, slick, ghostly, sacred. She stirs it into a small jar of milk, the mistress's evening comfort. White folding into white, death folding into habit. Her hands don't shake. They never do. When you've lost everything, nothing left inside you trembles. She carries the jar toward the big house. Each step feels like crossing from earth into myth. The boards creak. The nightbirds cry. The cicadas rise in chorus. A hymn for vengeance. Inside, candles tremble in the mistress's room. The woman lies reading a book she doesn't understand. The words only meant to pass the time until morning. Mara enters with her quiet grace, head bowed, the same ritual she's repeated for years. The mistress doesn't even look up, just reaches for the milk. Habit is always the easiest place to hide a blade. The cup touches her lips, a sip, then another. She sighs, murmurs a tired thank you. Her voice drifts like smoke. She never notices Mara watching her eyes glaze, her breath slow. It's gentle at first, like sleep claiming a child. Then her chest tightens. Her hand reaches for nothing, and the book slides from her fingers like a final confession. Mara turns away before the sound ends. There is no joy, no smile, just silence, deep, thick, holy. Downstairs, the master drinks with his overseer. They laugh the way men do when they've forgotten what their laughter costs. The smell of rum, the echo of boots against oak, the whip still hanging by the door, a promise, a memory. She watches them through the crack of the door, eyes like wet coals. She knows their habits, the way the master's cup is always full, the way the overseer leans too close to refill his own. She moves with precision. The jar is emptied into the decanter, milk traded for liquor, poison traded for pride. The firelight flickers across her face, turning her skin into bronze and shadow. She whispers her daughter's name just once, and it feels like an oath. The men drink. They don't even pause. Their laughter continues for a moment longer, then stumbles. The master coughs, his face paling to ash. The overseer grips the table edge, teeth grinding. The sound is ugly, human, honest. The same sound her child made when fever took her. And that sound, that echo, is what breaks her stillness. Mara steps forward, her eyes steady. She doesn't speak, doesn't scream. She simply stands before them as they fall, two bodies collapsing under the weight of their own cruelty. The room fills with the scent of spilled rum, sweat and death, the trinity of their sins. When it's done, she kneels by the fire. The flames twist and crackle, almost dancing for her. She feeds it with dried herbs, mint, sage, bloodroot, letting the smoke rise like incense. This is her ceremony, her daughter's requiem, her freedom. Outside, the night wind shifts. Dogs bark in the distance. Somewhere a rooster crows too early, confused by the light growing inside the house. She takes a candle from the mantel and sets it on the floor. The wax runs down her fingers, hot but cleansing. She places it beneath the table, near the spilled rum. A moment later, a spark, then flame. It starts small, hungry, trembling, then it spreads, crawling up the wood, licking the curtains, finding air. The house breathes fire. And for the first time in years, Mara breathes with it. She walks out slow, her face calm, her eyes reflecting the blaze behind her. The night explodes into light. Smoke curls like spirits, rising. Windows shatter. The roof moans and folds in on itself. The air is thick with ash and justice. She doesn't run, she doesn't hide. She walks into the field, the earth beneath her bare feet still warm from the day's sun, and watches the house burn. The glow stains her skin gold and red, the colors of endings. Her breath is steady, her heart quiet. The fire crackles like applause. Behind her, the flames consume the house. Before her, the field stretches endless and black. She feels her daughter's presence again, closer this time. A soft whisper in the wind, like a hand brushing her shoulder. And in that whisper, she hears one word, enough. Mara closes her eyes. The smoke drifts upward, carrying everything that once was, cruelty, laughter, blood, memory, into the dark sky. She doesn't look back again. There's nothing left worth seeing. Only the light of what she's done. Only the peace of silence earned. The flames eat through the night like beasts freed from centuries of hunger. Timbers groan and fall. Sparks climb the sky, trying to reach heaven but dying midair. Mara stands at the edge of it all, still as a tree that's seen every storm. Her eyes don't blink. Her breath is steady. Smoke curls around her like a shawl, warm, living, alive. The fire paints her skin in shifting tones, gold, red, black. It gives her back what life had stolen, light. For years, her world was the dull brown of soil, the grey of ash, the pale white of cotton that stole her hands. Now, color floods everything, fierce and wild. It feels wrong, it feels right. The big house collapses in stages. Each crash sounds like a name being erased. First, the mistress's parlor, where she once poured tea while Mara stood behind her, unseen. Then the master's office, the room where decisions were made about bodies and children and coin. Then the bedrooms, one by one, the silent witnesses to power, the places where screams went unnoticed. Now everything is sound and heat and unmaking. Mara takes one step closer. The air bites at her lungs, thick with soot and memory. The hem of her dress flickers with light, but she doesn't move back. She wants the smoke to touch her, to mark her, to baptize her in ruin. For years, she lived in someone else's house, and now she lets that house live in her one last time as fire and ghost. She whispers again, the same words she said when the first spark caught. For her, Just 2 words, but they hold her. Lifetime. She doesn't mean just her daughter anymore. She means all of them, the nameless ones buried under dirt without headstones, the ones who sang softly so their masters wouldn't hear the rage in their songs, the ones who gave birth in chains and died in silence. She means them. The wind shifts. Ash drifts across the field, grey snow in summer heat. It settles in her hair, her eyelashes, her lips. She tastes iron and smoke and something almost sweet, the aftertaste of freedom. Behind her, voices rise, distant shouts, men running, horses screaming, the overseers from nearby fields, the neighbors smelling fire, the ones who will come to name this night as sin. But to Mara, it is scripture, the kind written in flame and silence, not ink and sermon. She walks toward the small river that cuts through the back of the property. Each step leaves a black print in the dirt, footprints carved in soot and sweat. The river is shallow, murky, trembling under moonlight. She kneels beside it, her reflection barely visible, just shadow and ripple. She dips her hands in, washing away the bloodless dust. The water turns grey, then clear again. The earth forgives what it must. She sits there for a long time. The night hums. Owls call. The wind carries the faint crackle of what remains. Mara feels her body ache. Not from labor, but from release. A deep, bone-heavy exhaustion. Revenge is not victory. It is an unburdening. A weight lifted, but scars left behind to remember its shape. In the distance, the fire begins to dim. The house is gone, nothing but embers and ghosts. The field looks almost peaceful now, as if the land itself has taken a long breath. Mara speaks softly, almost to herself. They won't remember me right. Her voice trembles. Not with fear, but with truth. Maybe that's fine. She knows how stories are told on this land, how those in power rewrite the endings to make monsters of the wronged and martyrs of the cruel. She knows that by morning, they'll say she went mad. They'll say she turned on her masters for no reason, that her mind snapped under grief. They'll never mention the chains, the child, the years of silence. But truth doesn't die in their mouths. It lives in the ashes. She picks up a handful of wet earth and presses it to her chest. It feels like heartbeat. It feels like beginning, somewhere beyond the trees. The first light of dawn spills across the horizon, faint, silver, trembling. It touches her face like a promise. The day doesn't care what happened in the night. But she does. She always will. She rises slowly, every movement deliberate, as if standing might shatter the fragile calm inside her. Her back is straight, her shoulders strong. Her shadow stretches long across the field, merging with the smoke, becoming something eternal. She turns once, just once, to look at what's left of the house. The chimney still stands, crooked and black, a monument to the lie it once was. A piece of roof hangs, glowing red before finally folding into itself. And for a moment, in the drifting smoke, she imagines faces, the mistress, the master, the overseer, their shapes rising, fading, dissolving into the air. She doesn't feel triumph, only quiet, only balance. For the first time in years, the field feels empty, and that emptiness is beautiful. No voices calling her name in command. No footsteps behind her in the dark. Only the steady rhythm of her breathing and the whisper of wind through reeds begins to walk toward the forest. Every step feels lighter. Her hands are open, palms forward, unarmed, unburdened. The night wraps around her like old cloth. Insects sing. Somewhere, far away, thunder murmurs, rain coming to cool the ashes. She doesn't look back again. The land can keep its ghosts. She's done tending to them. Her mind drifts, not to fire or pain, but to memory. Her daughter's small hands, the way she used to hum when she worked, a melody made of sorrow and strength. Mara hums it now, low and soft, as she walks. The sound folds into the wind, a song without words, without audience, without end. The forest greets her like an old friend. Branches hang low, leaves whispering secrets. Somewhere deep within, a stream glitters. She walks toward it, drawn by the shimmer of water and the scent of new earth. And there, in the half-light, she sees it. A white flower blooming beside the stream, angel's trumpet, the same flower she once used for death. Now, it glows like moonlight, untouched, uncut. She kneels before it, eyes closed. A smile ghosts across her lips. Even poison can be beautiful. Even death can feed new life. She presses her hand into the soil beside it, not to take, but to plant. She leaves behind the last of her herbs, her medicine, her story. The earth will remember. The river will carry her song, and the wind will whisper her name in the cane fields when no one's listening. Mara stands. The light has changed, dawn now full, bright, almost cruel in its purity. She steps into it without fear. The fire, the smoke, the chains, all behind her. The path ahead, unknown, but hers. For the first time, the word freedom doesn't sound like an idea. It sounds like breath, like heartbeat, like the sound of her own bare feet against the earth. Steady, unhurried, alive, and that's how she goes, not as a ghost, not as a sinner, but as a woman reborn from fire. By sunrise, the plantation smolders. The sky above it is the color of old bruises, purple, gray, ash blue. Smoke hangs low over the fields, moving slow, heavy, unwilling to leave. The scent of it lingers, burnt wood, scorched silk, and the ghost of rum. The river carries flakes of black ash like dying butterflies. Men arrive from neighboring farms, faces hard, eyes wide. They speak in fragments, crossing themselves, whispering prayers they don't mean. What happened here? One says, though the answer breathes all around them. No one dares step too close to the ruins at first. It feels unholy. Not destruction, judgment. The chimney stands alone, crooked and charred, pointing toward heaven like an accusation. Bodies lie beneath it. The master, the mistress, the overseer. Their faces pale, their hands still reaching. Death doesn't look cruel here. It looks balanced. Even the wind moves gentler around the ruins, as if it respects what has ended. They search the cabins next, empty. Every pot cold, every bed made, every tool neatly in place. No chaos, no panic, only absence, clean, deliberate, final. Someone whispers her name, Mara. The sound hangs in the air like smoke refusing to rise. The sheriff comes by noon. His boots crunch through the cinders. He spits once, mutters about madness, about one of them finally snapping. He doesn't see it as justice. He never could. To him, the fire is only sin made visible. He writes a report that will vanish into some courthouse drawer. Negro woman, property of Samuel Clark, presumed dead after fire. Motive, unknown. History reduced to ash on paper. But not everyone believes the story dies there. The field hands whisper differently. At night, by the slave quarters of nearby farms, they murmur her name like prayer. They say she walked through fire and never burned. They say the river turned silver when she crossed it. They say her daughter's spirit walks beside her, humming that same low tune that once lulled the babies of her oppressors. Children grow up hearing the tale. Some are told she was a witch. Some are told she was an angel, but the truth hides somewhere between the two. a woman who refused to let her pain die quietly. Weeks later, rain comes hard, thunder rolls through the hills, washing away the last black scars of the fire. Grass grows where the house once stood, tall, green, defiant. The soil, fed by ash and grief, blooms richer than before. Corn sprouts higher. Wild flowers spread along the fence. Nature doesn't mourn, it rebuilds. By the next season, nothing remains of the house but a stone step and a single iron hinge. But the field workers say when you stand there at dusk, you can still smell smoke, sweet, faint, almost floral, the scent of angel's trumpet. The flower that gave death, the flower that now grows wild by the river. Sometimes when the night wind rises, the overseer's old hound howls, not toward the ruins, but toward the trees, as if calling someone home. The men curse it. The women smile. Because they know some stories don't end. They just keep walking. And Mara's story, born in chains, forged in flame, now moves like the wind, unseen, but felt by every leaf it touches. Years pass. The fire becomes a rumor, then a warning, then a myth. The ruins sink back into the soil, swallowed by vines and time. Children are told not to play near the river, that a ghost walks there, a woman in white, humming lullabies that make the air grow cold. But those who listen closely know her song isn't sorrow. It's strength disguised as silence. The plantation is never rebuilt. Owners come and go, each trying to tame the land again, but nothing grows right where the big house once stood. Crops rot fast, animals refuse to graze, even the wind moves around it, never through it. They call it cursed ground. But to the enslaved who still labor nearby, it's sacred. A place that remembers, a wound that never lets itself close. At night, around the fires behind new cabins, her name returns, softly at first, then louder, then sung. Old women whisper it into their granddaughters' ears. Mara, the one who burned the master's house, the one who didn't run, the one who walked through smoke and came out whole. The story changes with every telling, the way truth always does when it travels by mouth. Some say she poisoned with plants from the devil's garden. Some say she summoned lightning with her grief. Others say she was lifted by angels before the flames, touched her dress. Each version adds something impossible, but the heart of it stays the same. A woman wronged, a fire that answered her pain, a silence that became power. As years turn to decades, the world outside begins to shift. Chains loosen, wars are fought. Freedom becomes law, but not peace. The people carry their scars into the next century, some visible, some hidden in bone, and still, her name survives, passed between hands like an heirloom that glows faintly in the dark. In Louisiana, in the 1880s, a preacher's wife begins collecting stories of the old plantations, the haunted ones, the burned ones, the places that refused to forget. When she comes to Clark Hollow, she writes in her notebook. Locals speak of a woman who set fire to her master's house and vanished into the swamp. They say her ghost hums to newborns and makes the sick sleep easy. They call her the midwife of smoke. The name sticks. By the 1900s, she's no longer just a woman, she's folklore. Her face, imagined 100 ways. Her deeds embroidered on quilts, whispered in songs. In one version, she's an angel of vengeance. In another, she's a protector of lost children. In every version, she's free, freedom. That word she never lived to speak in daylight becomes her second name, Mara, freedom. It appears scratched into the underside of church pews, carved into the walls of old cabins, not written as prayer, but as proof. When the Great Migration begins, families leaving the South carry her with them, north to Chicago, west to St. Louis. Her story travels in memory, folded into hymns, disguised in gospel verses. She lit the night with justice, they sing, though no one outside their circle knows what it means. But those who know, know. Young nurse in 1930 hums her lullaby while delivering a child in a segregated hospital. A boy in 1940 carves her name into the wooden floor of his classroom, beneath the desk where he learns about a history that forgets women like her. In 1963, during a protest in Birmingham, an old woman carries a jar of wildflowers to the march. Angel's trumpet, grown from seeds, she says her grandmother kept from the woman who burned the house. Each act, small, each memory alive. By the time the century turns again, her story no longer belongs to one place or one people. She's a symbol, half remembered, half invented, all true in spirit. Artists paint her, eyes closed, standing before fire. Poets write her name into verses about rage that heals instead of destroys. Historians argue over her existence, but the argument itself gives her shape. Because history isn't what happened, it's what refuses to be forgotten. And still, on quiet summer nights near the river where the plantation once stood, the air smells faintly of sweetness, not decay, not smoke, but something between. A scent like angel's trumpet after rain. Children chase fireflies there now, unaware that their laughter carries through the same air that once filled with screams. The ground no longer feels haunted, it feels whole. The old chimney is gone, but wildflowers mark its outline, white blooms glowing in moonlight, stubborn, eternal. Locals say they never planted them, they just appeared one spring, after the last farmer tried to plow the field and gave up. The flowers return every year, always in the same shape. Woman standing tall, maybe it's chance, maybe it's her, maybe it's both. Legends have a way of choosing their own endings, and so Mara lives, not in chains, not in flesh, but in the soil and the stories that grow from it. She is every whisper that says enough, every hand that refuses to kneel, every fire that burns not from hate, but from justice. She was born a midwife, she became a mother, she died a flame. And now, she delivers something greater than life, a reminder that even in silence, even in ashes, freedom breathes. Fire is not evil, it is honest. It consumes what pretends to last forever and leaves only truth behind. Mara understood this long before she lit the match. She knew that some walls must burn for air to move. Again, history calls her act destruction. But destruction is only the first language of rebirth. Everything that ever mattered, light, stars, love, freedom, begins with something breaking open. The world was not created gently. It exploded. Why then should freedom arrive softly? We speak of justice as if it were calm, measured, polite, but true justice is a storm. It shakes the foundations, scatters the comfortable, exposes what hides in daylight pretending to be good. Justice, when real, terrifies even the righteous. Mara's fire was not revenge, it was remembrance. Every flame carried a face, every crack of timber a cry once silenced. Her fire spoke for the ones buried without names, for the mothers who birthed children only to watch them sold, for the men whipped into silence, for the little girls taught to smile while being broken. Each ember said what their mouths could not. We are still here. They will say she was mad. History always calls women mad when they refuse to kneel. But madness is sometimes only clarity too sharp for the world to bear. She saw truth naked, without disguise, and it burned her, yes, but it burned everything else first. If you listen closely to the silence after any great tragedy, you'll hear something beneath it. Not mourning, but motion. the earth rearranging itself. That is what her fire did. It rearranged the meaning of pain. It took agony and translated it into power. And what of mercy? People ask, could she not forgive? But forgiveness is not owed to oppressors. It is earned by the repentant. And there was no repentance there. Only arrogance disguised as ownership, only cruelty calling itself order. So she answered not with words, but with flame. Fire doesn't ask permission, it simply is. And so was she. When I think of her now, I don't see the act. I see the silence that followed, that deep, heavy stillness where the world for one brief night held its breath and saw itself. That was her final gift, reflection. Because until the oppressor sees his reflection in the fire, he will believe his sins are invisible. Her story is not a lesson in violence. It's a mirror of consequence. What happens when suffering is forced to whisper for too long? It begins to scream in the only language left to it, the language of undoing. And yet, in her undoing, she did not curse the world. She purified it. That plantation had stood for generations, built on pain, dressed in wealth. It took one night, one woman, one act of defiance to return it to dust, the material from which everything honest must begin again. If history were just, her name would be carved on monuments, but monuments are built for conquerors, not liberators. Instead, she is remembered in wind and wildflower, in the hush before a storm, in the tremor that moves through those who refuse to bow. Her monument is the earth itself. And maybe that's better. Stone forgets. Soil remembers. Her name is not written on paper, but in pulse, in the quiet rage of those who still fight to breathe freely, in the women who raise their voices and are called difficult, in the men who walk unarmed yet unbroken, in the children who refuse to inherit fear. Her story asks a question we still cannot answer. How much must burn before the world becomes clean? The question haunts every age. Every generation meets it differently. Some with torches, some with truth, some with trembling hands that hold both love and fury in the same breath. Because freedom, in its purest form, is both beautiful and terrible. It demands the courage to destroy what destroys you, even if the cost is yourself. Mara knew that. And perhaps that's why the fire didn't kill her. It completed her. She didn't end in that house. She became the fire's memory, a spirit made of light and ash, teaching the living what it means to truly be free. Maybe every act of courage since then, every rebellion, every uprising, every whisper that said no more, carries a trace of her flame. Maybe she lives not in legend, but in the bloodstream of resistance itself. And if one day the world finally learns to balance power with compassion, to remember without chains, to forgive without forgetting, then maybe her fire will rest. Until then, it burns quietly inside us all. The match she struck was not just against wood, it was against time. And time still glows with her defiance. The land is quiet now. No screams, no chains, no fire. Only the hum of insects, the rustle of leaves, the slow breath of the river winding through the fields. Morning fog drifts low, soft as linen. It hides what once was and blesses what remains. The plantation is gone. No white fences. No house on the hill. Just a scatter of stones, a rusted gate. A step that leads nowhere. Grass climbs over everything, green and stubborn. Even the old well is covered in moss, the earth reclaiming what men once took. Children play there. Sometimes they chase fireflies and skip stones across the water. They do not know the name of the woman who walked into the fire, but they know the story. Their mothers tell it in low tones while combing their hair by lantern light. She burned the house of her masters, they whisper, and walked free. The story changes with each telling. Sometimes she is young and wild, sometimes gray and tired. Sometimes she saves her daughter, sometimes she joins her. But always, she burns, always she walks away, always. She is free, and the children listen, eyes wide, hearts still, as if waiting for the sound of footsteps outside. Because in some way, she never left, they say on summer nights. When the air is heavy with the scent of flowers, you can see a flicker by the river, a small light, gold against the black, moving slow, graceful, almost human. Some say it's the lantern of a midwife still tending the souls of the lost. Some say it's her fire, refusing to die. The elders smile when they hear it. They don't argue, don't explain, because they know truth doesn't always live in fact. Sometimes it lives in feeling, in the ache behind a story, in the silence that follows a name. And her name still carries weight. Mara. The sound of it is like a heartbeat under ash. Time forgets faces but remembers pain. It buries cruelty in books, but the earth remembers everything. Every cry, every drop of blood, every match struck in the dark. The soil beneath that field is richer than any map can show, fed by sorrow, made holy by defiance. If you kneel there long enough, press your ear to the ground, you'll hear it. Not voices, not ghosts, but rhythm. The slow, deep rhythm of life renewing itself, because even after ruin, the world insists on growing again. That is its rebellion. That was hers too. Mara's story never asked for glory. It asked for understanding. Not to be sainted, not to be pitied, but to be seen. A woman who bled, who broke, who burned, and who chose to stand. Anyway, her legacy is not carved in marble. It moves through people like current, through the hands of every woman who dares to heal while hurting. Through the eyes of every child who refuses to bow. Through the trembling voice of every man who speaks truth, though it costs him comfort. Some stories end with death. Hers ended with awakening. She walked into flame, and what walked out of that fire was not body, but idea. A quiet, unending defiance. And maybe that's all legacy ever is. Not a name, not a grave, but the way the world feels different after you're gone. The wind shifts. The sun climbs. The field shimmers gold. Somewhere, unseen, the river hums a song that sounds almost like a lullaby. Maybe she is there. Maybe she is nowhere. But one truth remains. Fire forgets nothing. And as long as stories are told by those who survived, Mara's flame will flicker on the tongue of time, burning not to destroy but to remind. Rain drips through the cracks of the roof like time itself. Slow, cold, relentless. A single candle burns on the table, trembling with the breath of the storm. Beside it, a bowl of blood and linen. The smell of life, the smell of death, married in the same air. A woman bends over a crying newborn. Her hands are brown and trembling, her wrists thin as twigs, her skin glistening with sweat. They call her Mara. To the white masters, she is the midwife, the one who brings life when their wives cannot. To the other slaves, she is a whisper, a prayer, the one who remembers. She wipes the child clean, her touch soft, almost sacred. The baby's cry slices through the storm. The master's wife exhales, relief, gratitude, fear. Somewhere outside, the men laugh, drunk on rum and the scent of wet soil. Mara listens, always listening. Her ears catch the rhythm of boots, the shatter of a bottle, the groan of the old house under rain. It is a song she knows by heart, a song of masters and screams and babies who never see morning. Her eyes fall to the floor, to the basin where her own reflection shivers in red water. It looks back at her, distant, hollow. She remembers another cry, one that stopped too soon. A child born of her blood, her breath. A child sold under the noon sun, screaming for her mother as coins exchanged hands. The sound never left her bones. Thunder rolls, the candle flickers, painting ghosts on the wall. For a moment, she sees her daughter's shadow among them, small, reaching, fading. Mara blinks. Only the wind remains. The mistress speaks. "God bless your hands." "Mara," she says, voice trembling with relief. Mara nods once. Her lips form a small, quiet smile, the kind that hides everything. The child wails again, alive, pale, precious. Mara hums a hymn, low, slow, broken by the sound of rain. Her hands move with grace, wrapping the infant in white cloth. Her voice trembles but never cracks. Each note carries something deeper than song. A secret, a curse, a prayer too old to die. When the storm quiets, she sets the child beside its mother and steps away. Her candle burns lower. The red water in the basin darkens. The wind carries the scent of earth and smoke. Outside, the night waits, thick and endless. Somewhere in its dark belly, a whisper forms. "They took mine." A pause. "Now I'll take theirs." The screen holds on her face, calm, unreadable. The candle goes out. Only the sound of rain remains.